Lifting Leaders podcast, where we're unleashing leader possibilities to make a better world. I'm Tricia Ryan, and together with Crystal Roberts, we're diving deeper into some of the complexities of the world's most critical challenges and exploring innovative ways of navigating through them.
Through interviews with experts and leaders just like you, we are exploring what it takes to thrive as a leader today and examining new ways of thinking about how to creatively lead into a more equitable, socially responsible, and sustainable future. And the future starts now. Hi, Tricia. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing, Crystal?
I'm doing fabulous.
Yeah?
Yeah. And today we're doing a GEMS episode.
Yes, we are.
Last week, we had a fantastic guest, Traci Staffen, and she is an amazing coach. And we enjoyed talking to her about a really interesting topic around menopause.
You know, that was fascinating. Being a woman, I kind of thought I knew about it. I didn't have a clue, clearly. So I am now on my quest to find out more and more and more about it, because I'm finding that without doing that deeper dive, I don't have the information. I may be going down the wrong road. I mean, that could impact my health, and I don't want to do that. So that was really insightful. I thought it was a really great episode. So
yeah, really made us think about some things that we hadn't really thought about before, or at least thought about them in new ways. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we are actually talking about menopause on the podcast and talking about a challenging topic, that was really good for us too, to venture into something that was maybe a little uncomfortable to be talking about on a podcast.
No kidding. Actually, when you think about it, that is, it is what we say is our mission and our purpose, right? We look at things differently, and we may go back and look at foundational stuff, but we put a twist to it to see if there's a new way of looking at it so that we can tackle today's and tomorrow's, critical challenges. And same thing with the coaching. We're on this special coaches series, and we're looking at niches and things that are, coaches that are having very specialized fields of coaching. And I thought, wow, I never would have thought of a menopause coach.
Yeah.
But wow, what a cool idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Because there's so many people, so many women who need that. And also, as we were talking about in the episode, it's not just about women.
No.
That women, partners to women and children, and what do we want to talk to our own daughters and sons about?
Right.
And could be a colleague at work or our boss, or it's part of life. It's a natural part of life, and we should be talking about it.
And let's expand that a little bit. It changes the conversation with your doctor.
Yeah.
To me, that in itself is also a huge aha. It's like, wow, I guess I always thought that they had the answers to this, but clearly may not be the case, right?
Yeah.
So this is a little bit more information, and being more informed helps you make better decisions, right?
Right. Yeah. So today we thought we would focus, as part of this series on coaches, we would talk a little bit about not menopause, because we wanted to sort of talk about maybe a little more of a meta message that we heard in that episode, which is really about awakening to new possibilities.
Yes.
So we've talked about this topic before on the podcast, and we've even had a guest who wrote a whole book about it, but really remaining curious. Yeah. And that's an important thing as we think about information that we're getting or not getting. Mm-hmm. Maybe we don't have enough information, and we're just accepting something for, as you gave the example of the doctor. Mm-hmm. So the doctor is giving us information. It doesn't sound quite right with us. Our internal intuition is saying, I don't know if I really believe that. And so how do we get curious and not just accept because an expert, or even in this case with the menopause, she was telling us that our doctors actually aren't experts in this, because they don't get a lot of schooling. And so we need to become the expert. We need to actually go out and look for more information.
Yeah, I think it's not only if it makes you wonder if something is right, or if you're just not feeling like it's the answer that you need. go beyond that a little bit and say, I don't like what I'm hearing. Just identifying that you don't like what you're hearing, or you don't like something that you're hearing, in my mind, it hasn't always sparked me to go running and looking for the answer, but it is now, all the time. And it's, to me, also a difference between letting my mind get fixed.
Yeah.
Or keeping it in a growth state, right? And we both know that you age differently when you keep a growth mindset. You age in a more healthy manner most of the time, and certainly more happy, because you are not getting stuck in a rut or getting stuck in a box, basically. So, I think anytime you have an opportunity to bust out of that box a little bit, you'll be better off for it, right?
Yeah.
You may not always like the answer you get, but it does give you more information in which to make a decision.
Better decision making for sure, because you have more to look at. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing we were sort of talking about is, where do you get your information?
Yes.
So we've really gotten used to just getting on the internet, right? And Googling something. And we know that even that has a lot of bias built into it. So where do we go? There's so many different options. We can talk to other people.
Yes.
Of course, you can try and find an expert. You can still read a book, read an article, talk to your neighbor. So there's lots of different ways to go out and seek information.
Yeah, it is. It's not all on the Google search engine, right? And it's also not all on wiki links and stuff. Wikipedia. I can tell you, when I was in college, I remember being warned that is not a good spot to get information, because it's very rarely really all fact, right?
Yeah.
But you can go to the internet to get like the links to resources. If you don't know where to go, who might you talk to? You can put the topic in, and a lot of times it will direct you to the type of doctor you need to talk to, maybe the type of lawyer, the type of whatever, so that you're at least that informed. And then you can start looking for other ways or other avenues, to look down. Reading books is another way to do it. My goodness.
Listen to podcasts.
Yes. Because we are always very factual.
Yeah. Today we are actually running, I was going to say solo, but duo maybe.
Yeah.
No actual article today. We're relying on our own experience.
Can you believe we're doing this? I don't think our listeners has ever heard of Gems that didn't have an article attached to it.
I know. Yeah.
We happen to know what we're talking about on this one, though.
On this one. Yeah, for sure. So the other thing, and part of that awakening, is to really recognize, when are we sort of walking through our life on autopilot? And, sometimes that serves us a little bit, but we also need to be aware of where it's not serving us.
Yeah. I'm actually working on an article right now about that, because I've noticed in myself, and if I can just share for a second, that, I have this like profound love of life and all sorts of things in it, and I'm curious about so many things, and I want to know everything, and I want to know or learn every musical instrument in the world. I mean, I love stuff, right? And writing. I actually love writing now too, all the time. So the more I write, the more I like it, and that's cool. Except that I found for the last few years, and I think because once we hit COVID is when it started, I think, really, I started just kind of operating my whole life on autopilot. So, I would take pleasure. If I went shopping, it was okay. I would get a thing. But when I got home, the thing wasn't so special anymore. And I remember when I would not buy something unless I really wanted it. And then when I got it, I enjoyed it, right?
Yeah.
But I found myself, as I was actually cleaning out a closet one day, and that's when I started the article, was that all the stuff that was in the closet, I could maybe put my finger on two things that were so special to me that I was glad I bought them.
Yeah.
And I thought, why have I allowed myself to spend all that money and time and effort to get things that mean nothing to me?
Yeah.
And so I started thinking, as I was writing this article, how can I change that? So I am cleaning one closet at a time. And if there's anything that I am not somehow attached to, if I keep it, it's because I need to have clothes to wear, right?
Right.
But if it's an article of some type or some kind of tchotchke or something that I'm not really attached to, I'm getting rid of it. I am not keeping stuff anymore. I actually finally sold my mother's dining table, which was a beautiful dining table, but not my style. And it sat in my dining room, and it just never made me happy. And I never sat at it unless I had to. And I sold it because I have no emotional attachment to it. I want something different. And it felt so freeing to do something like that. But that was when I realized I'm not doing something on autopilot. Right now I'm doing something and I'm thinking about it. I'm finding out what I need to do. I actually posted it on Facebook Marketplace. It was like, I never did that before, but I did some research to find out if that was a scam or not, you know.
Yeah.
It actually turned out to be a pretty good way to get rid of things, you know. So bringing it back to what you're talking about, I think it's kind of an awesome thing. It's also kind of a weird awakening to realize that you may have been just like coasting through life and not thinking about things and not thinking about people. You know, the relationship you built, are they precious to you? If not, why not? Find out why not, right? Be curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had an experience, a sort of awakening experience just the other weekend.
Oh.
When my husband and I, we went and we rented a cabin that was actually a old fire lookout cabin. Really, really, really remote. Really remote. And nine miles down a dirt road, 2.5 hours from a city. And it was beautiful. It was so cool. But there's no running water, no bathroom. There was an outhouse that was quite a ways away. And you had to walk, since we're so remote, right? So had all this fear around
bears.
Bears and cougars and elk and wildlife that I might encounter on the way.
Wolves.
No electricity. So one of the things that when we got home, it was amazing how like appreciative and grateful I was for these very simple things that we just totally take for granted in our lives. Just to flip on the light, to walk around the corner and there's your restroom. You know, it was really interesting. I had this even though I had a great time, it was really fun, overwhelming appreciation, gratitude for the house that we have that provides these basics.
It's, to me, that awakening it happens no matter where you are. You know, our last guest was talking about menopause, and so we were, you know, focusing on being curious about that, right?
Yeah.
Just about, you know, asking your doctor, because it's not their field to be just menopause specialists, right?
Yeah.
Very rarely. So if they don't know the answer, I'm hoping they're going looking for it.
Yeah.
But if they don't know the answer, you certainly should be going and looking for it. And I think we do have so many situations in our lives where we could be more curious.
Yeah.
We could actually, wow, can you imagine what the world would be like if more people were curious and less people were on fixed mindsets and making decisions that turned into, you know, polarization in the way we feel about things and wars and all sorts of things that are not good, or making bad decisions that hurt other people, you know? And so it's like, wow, we could actually evolve this world a little bit if we were just to start digging. But how weird is it, and how absolutely normal is it that we're at this age in our world, you know, this stage of the world where things are all so instant, you know, and they weren't when I was growing up. They were getting there for sure, right? But now it is the norm, you know, and it is the norm for kids to live on the internet. It is the norm for them to have expectations because they've never known a world where they didn't have a voice. Right.
Well, and speaking of, you know, we were talking about you're talking about living on the internet. One of the things as we think about where do you get information is experience. And so just thinking about, you have a curiosity about something, go experience it.
Yes.
Go take that walk and feel that water and feel the grass and hug the tree. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of our conversation with Megan a few weeks ago about just being so present with what's around you.
Yes.
Yeah. Learn that way through interaction with our world.
In our Hudson world, as a coach, in our Hudson world, in the cycle of renewal, we talk about, getting ready.
Yeah.
It's that experimentation stuff, right? It's doing things that you haven't done, test things, try things, find out about things, right? Learn.
Yeah.
And then you're ready. Then you get ready. You're getting ready for something, right?
Yeah.
Same thing in life. Same thing that we do all the time.
Yeah. I think part of that awakening also is recognizing, and that kind of goes to that autopilot, but when is something important enough to actually pay attention to it?
Yes.
And that sometimes when we just accept the past and we think that that's just going to continue on, and we aren't open necessarily, it's sort of that growth and fixed mindset, as you were saying, that things change. So even when Traci was talking about, I would have thought, it's because there's new research that there's more options.
Yeah.
And she was saying, actually, it's not. The research has been there for a long time. It's just we're not talking about it. And the doctors aren't educated around it. And so it is there. But we also know many times that there is new research. There's new ways to cure cancer.
Right.
There's even, I was thinking about, for myself, I was always told with the cancer that I had, it wasn't actually curable. And so that was actually how eventually it was going to catch up with me, and it was going to kill me.
Right.
But the last time I went in, which was about 3 years ago, they actually told me that because the research had advanced far enough that I had actually been clear of my cancer long enough that now they could actually say, yeah, you are cured, which they never would have said that in the past. They told me you won't ever be cured.
It's happening all around us. I mean, we have a former guest and a friend of ours who was diagnosed last year with stage 4 lung cancer.
Yeah.
And she went through chemotherapy and a little bit of radiation, and she was cured. Most people I've ever heard of who have stage 4, that is your sentence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
The end.
Yeah.
And she has been so active and so filled with love and stuff. But what she did was a lot of research on her illness, but also on what vibes in the world, can change the trajectory. And she did a lot of research, and she talked to a lot of people, and she read and she wrote and she did all sorts of things, and she's cured.
Yeah.
She's
Amazing.
cured. And she just had she'll have scans for probably many years, but she just had her scan and it was clear.
Yeah.
For the third time or second
amazing.
time. Yeah.
Amazing. So where in our life can we push past maybe something that we've been told is this is the way it is, and we've accepted it maybe. And now things have changed and we need to think about how do we integrate that into our life, and what does our life look like now?
I remember when I started working for a federal government agency in Washington, D.C., and they said they really wanted me to work for them because of something I brought to the table. And they were looking for that. They were looking for a fix, basically, right? And I was looking to change my location. So I thought, okay, I could do this. I no problem. I've done it for bigger organizations than this one. And I was there for, maybe 2 days. And I started hearing the mantra, which was, we don't do it that way here. We don't do it that way here. And so I spent several months trying to get through the door of we don't do it that way here until I finally just said, I can't do this anymore. It's not me. I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not being successful for them, but I'm not being successful for me either.
Yeah.
And I noticed about a year ago, I was talking to someone I used to work with when I was working there. And she and I still keep in touch. And she just retired. And she told me that they had implemented a succession plan, which is what I was brought in to build, but that they were finally ready to hear the message. But she said it only took them how many more years from the time that I did it. I was there in 2005. She retired in 2023. So she said they had only done it about 2 or 3 years before. So it took them almost 15 years to get to a point where they were ready to start looking at doing something different. But somebody couldn't live with the answer of we don't do it that way here, and good for them. Yeah. Right. I didn't have the tenure or the clout at that point. I was an entry person. And so of course they weren't going to trust me. And that happens in business a lot, right? Yeah. And so we have a lot of new people that fresh eyes, fresh perspectives come in and they go, why are you doing that? Why don't you do it this way? Yeah. We seasoned people could learn a lot by saying, you know what? Why don't we take a look at that? Yeah. It's that same not being on autopilot, right? Yeah. You can very easily get there if you become seasoned in an organization. Just go through it. This is the way we do it here. Yeah. It's the culture. It's what we do. And that should never be the case. I mean, if we want to see this world be a better place as we say we want, we should not take those answers as the answers, I don't think. I think we should be asking questions.
I agree. And I think that hope plays a role in this, right? Absolutely. We always have to hold hope that there is something better. Mm-hmm. And it's when we lose the hope, we sort of go to sleep again. Yes. Right? The awakening comes from holding hope that things can be better.
I love that you said that. And yes, we both know that hope is our thing right now, right? Yeah. But I love that you said that because I think that curiosity does spring hope. As long as we keep ourselves curious, as long as we're willing to see the what ifs, what are the possibilities, right? Ben Zander, I will always love Ben Zander for that. Ben and Rosabeth, Zander. Yeah. Absolutely the art of possibilities, right? Yeah. What is it? But keeping yourself curious is looking hopeful. Because the what ifs are the hope, right? Yeah. They're like, what could it be? It could be so much more, or it could be so much more comforting, or it could be better. It's like not taking your doctor's answer and saying, okay, I guess I need to be very unhappy about this, but okay, that's what I'm told. But that tells me there is no hope. Mm-hmm. If you're willing to take those answers, then where is your hope, right? I want to live to be 155 years old, and I've still got a couple more years. So if that's the case, I'm holding hope that we are going to come up with that fountain of youth for me because doggone it, I'm going to go to it. I will pay the price. No, I'm kidding. But that's just making light of it. But the reality is that, as long as we're open and willing and, and curious, I think we have hope. I'm hoping that's true. I believe I see it. I'm starting to see it a little bit more, and I'm not quite sure what's sparking it, but I think I'm going to need to do some investigating about what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that we were talking about that causes us sometimes to remain asleep and to not actually awaken is when we get too overwhelmed. There's too much going on. And we might be spending most of our time really serving other people and recognizing that we all have different phases of life and things sometimes are going to be really busy. But we need to remember to pause and to tune in and go inward and to reflect and really check in with ourselves. Yeah. How are we doing today? And I think a lot of people are so busy, they don't even ask that simple question. And it's important. Because if we're not doing okay, if we want things to be better, once we identify that, that's when we can start to take those steps to make things better, to start to be curious, to dig a little deeper.
Yeah, the pause is really important. Time away, quiet time, time without the distraction and all of the stuff that's coming at you, it makes me think about caregivers, home caregivers, family caregivers, right? People who take care of their parents or a family member, and they don't have, it's not that they would want a choice. They want that, but, or maybe they don't, but it is what it is for them. But it's that act of caring for someone else all the time and putting your needs and your wants second or third or fifth, right?
Yeah.
And not paying attention to things that are happening. I can tell you, I have family members who have given and given and given to other family members in an attempt to help them through their final days and, months and weeks, and have ignored very important signals for their own health.
Yeah.
Until it became a critical issue.
Yeah.
And, I will never forget, what they say whenever you're on a plane, be sure to put your own oxygen mask on before you help other people. And we don't do that. We very rarely do that. I have been talking to people in other countries, not like I'm not talking to them right this minute, but I have talked to people who have been from other countries who have said that that's not the way it is where they come from, that people do take care of their families, but they take care of themselves, and they actually like map out space for themselves so that they don't lose contact or being in touch with what's going on in their own worlds. I think that's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to be able to identify, how are we feeling? Are we feeling good?
Yeah.
What do we need to do to feel good?
Yeah.
And we know that's not a selfish act to take care of yourself.
Because in fact, it's selfless in a sense when you think about it. If you are still giving care to somebody else and you're taking care of yourself, you're actually taking better care of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right. We also thought a little bit about what are some of the mental models that we get really stuck in. And that's part of that fixed and growth mindset. But those can even be family stories.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I have a funny one that I'll share. So my husband, there is a sort of a family story. They have a name that is a family name, a first name that's been passed down through generations. And the story was around how the name came to be. And they always said it was this longer version of the name, and it's a state, essentially. And they said, there were so many kids, they just started naming them after the states. And, so it was just sort of a funny little story. It's like, this is where this name came from. And when his father passed away, we were given a copy of his birth certificate, and we got to see what his dad's name was. And his dad's name actually was the name of the state. So it did actually, not because there were so many kids, but it did originate from being named after a state. And we're like, oh my gosh. So this thing that we thought was a joke was actually real.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mental models, right?
It's true. I have a family that goes back a long, 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 long time. But you would think if you were to ask if my grandmother or my great-grandmother or my great-great-grandmother were still be around, you would think that we were descendants of royalty. I mean, real royalty. I mean, we were like probably in the pocket of Queen Victoria, whatever, or that we were absolutely directly related to the King of Spain. I'm going, the King of Spain. Okay. And I did my DNA check and I had no Spanish in me at all. So I'm thinking, well, perhaps, but maybe through some other door. But when we went to do archives and did the DNA check, and we went through ancestry.com and pulled records, and we found that no, we're not close to that even, So we may have last names that are directly from Scotland, and we do have a real rich Scottish heritage, but But we were not related to Queen Victoria or Queen Elizabeth or any of them. Or if we were, it was probably back in the caveman days because, quite frankly, I think everybody was related back then, right? It was just an interesting thing because that story floated around for generations in my family. You would have thought, I mean, my grandmother even stood taller because of it, because she carried herself like she was royalty. And, well, grandmother, yeah, you lived that dream. But it really got her nowhere other than a lot of people having a moment of an interesting story, I'm sure. It was pretty interesting. But it reminds me of Antique Roadshow, too. You know, when you go to Antique Roadshow and people have the story of something and then they find out that it was actually made about 25 years ago and for tourism.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, okay. Disappointment.
Yeah.
But to the other side of that, though, I think sometimes, especially if it's a health thing, right? You never know that you may find out that your family has a line of folks who have been, had a particular health issue and you didn't know that, right? That one that comes to mind for me, which was my grandmother and my mother, but, hopefully never me, was a dementia. Right?
Yeah.
My grandmother had dementia, and not until the very last part of her life, but she died at 99. They diagnosed her at 95. It was kind of like, wow, okay, by that time she's probably okay to be, a little bit having dementia. But my mother had it too. But then when you go back and you look through the lineage, you find that maybe there were other generations that had it. Sometimes that's a good marker for you to get tests.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe not for dementia, but for something else. And so I think there's that curiosity again, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of being afraid of it, it could be that information could actually save your life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
those were some of our thoughts about pulling some of the lessons, the sort of from a more meta perspective around awakening to new possibilities, tuning in to yourself and checking in and saying, how am I doing? Yeah. And if I'm not doing so great, I think I can do better. Get curious about that. Dig in. Figure out what is it that you need that would open up a new avenue for you for leading a happy life, having more impact, making a better world.
We are on this planet for just a finite period of time. And for me, I want to have an experience, right? For the time I'm here. So curiosity helps me get to that. And I hope that it helps others do that too,
Yeah. So we decided not to do an article, not to give you 1, 2, 3 steps to do to become more awake. But we did have a few thoughts about leaving you with maybe some reflection questions. And one of those is, what's important enough for you to actually dig a little deeper, to get curious, and to have an awakening around something? What's important enough for you to do that?
And why?
And why?
Why is it important? Is it important because it impacts your health? Is it important because it impacts a family member, a loved one? Is it important because it's going to inform your decisions going forward? Is it important enough that you just want to know more about it? Or is it something that you have a passion for that you've just never explored?
Yeah. And where can I utilize a growth mindset? Where might I be living in autopilot and needing to move over to a growth mindset? Where is there fixed? Where is there growth? And how might that, again, open up some new avenues or possibilities for you?
Yeah.
And what do you think about a third reflection question?
What will it take if you were to put a line down the piece of paper, the things that you're curious about, the things you're not curious about, right? For those things, even if there's just a few things you're curious about, what will it take for you to take that first step? It's a thought.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Tricia, for musing with me around what we learned from Traci.
It was kind of fun not doing an article, right?
Yeah.
So we might
hope
do that
you
again
enjoyed
sometime.
it. Yeah.
So let's keep that conversation going. If you have questions or comments about the show, you can find us on all our social media channels at lifting_leaders. We have so many more exceptional podcast episodes coming up with more fantastic guests. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. If you know someone who would find this episode inspiring, share it with them. Text them, email them, or take a screenshot and share it on your Instagram and tag us at lifting_leaders. If you'd like to know more about us, our guests, or the show, please go to our website at liftingleaderspodcast.com. You'll find our show notes there as well. If you're looking for help in developing your leaders or would like a growth opportunity yourself through leader coaching, please contact us through our website at www.liftingleaderspodcast.com. Thank you, Ari Chance Roberts, for his technical support of our show. Finally, please take 30 seconds to follow us. It helps you because you never miss an episode, and it helps us because you never miss an episode. To follow us, go to Lifting Leaders Podcast Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Then tap the plus sign at the upper right-hand corner and click follow. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star rating and review and share the episode with a friend, we would be so grateful. Thank you, Crystal. This was fun.
Thanks, Trisha.
Many thanks to you, our listeners. We so appreciate you. Find ways every day to lift each other up. Take care.
Bye. What did I say? What happened?
I don't know. I just got this.
Oh no.
Okay. I'm sorry. you
Apparently I said something really funny. Or I was too animated.
No, you were great. You were just great, but I think you said something about this curious.
Oh no.
We're just kidding it. Okay, I'm sorry. It was just a moment and it tickled me and I couldn't stop.
Oh no.
Okay, I'm sorry. This happens to famous actors and actresses too. Outtakes.